Welcome to the Law School Admissions Simplified podcast, where we talk about all things LSAT, law school admissions, and otherwise. I'm Ben Parker, and I do LSAT prep and law school admissions full time. Today, we're going to talk about who should and should not take logic games. It is currently March. This will come out early in April. So it's kind of an awkward time where the next LSAT is with logic games. But then after that, logic games will be removed from the test entirely. So, we'll be talking about if that makes sense for you. Additionally, we're then going to talk about the number one tip for applying to law school, the best thing you can do, and we'll kind of talk about how to avoid doing the opposite of it, which is what most people do. And then finally, we'll go through a personal statement, and we will apply what we have just talked about in terms of admissions to that personal statement. Okay, so the first one is whether or not you should take logic games. As I just mentioned, we're in an awkward time where, logic games is still currently on the test for April. That being said, if you're not registered for April, you're not taking it at this point. So there's only the June test left. And basically, all of you could get to perfect logic games by June because you can learn logic games very quickly. But my concern is that you won't master the other sections because studying logical reasoning and reading comprehension often takes substantially longer than, studying logic games. So I don't worry that people won't perfect logic games starting now. But I do worry that they won't perfect the other sections. And because they won't perfect the other sections, any time they're using towards logic games is now wasted. Because if you don't score as highly as you're capable of on June, you shouldn't apply with that score. You should wait to really reach your potential. So while I am a huge proponent of logic games, I think they're the most learnable section and the section that you can learn the quickest. I don't think that taking it with logic games really makes sense for anyone unless you're like 5 points away from where you need to be. So if you're already very close to where you need to, finally be when you take the test, then yeah, take logic games. That's awesome. However, I think that's going to be so few people that for almost anyone who's studying right now or beginning to study, you should plan on doing logical reasoning and reading comp only, which means you should just disregard logic games entirely. I like logic games. I think they're fun, but from a pragmatic standpoint of maximizing your chances with your best LSAT score, it's going to be a waste of your energy to study them. So it's unfortunate, but it is a situation that exists. That being said, are there exceptions? I mean, yeah, if you're a really quick learner, say you take a diagnostic and you score high 150s, low 160s, then yeah, you might learn so quickly you can still take it with games. And taking it with games will give you an inherent advantage over the next few years because over the next few years, everyone will be applying with LSAT scores without logic games on them. And those should be a little bit lower. The amount of people scoring in the 170s, high 160s, it should drop. There should be kind of a return to like 150 being the average. A few years ago when I took the LSAT in 2020, the median LSAT score was a 151. I believe it's now somewhere in the high 150s. In fact, let me speculate. Let's go see what it is. So LSAT has a history of not adjusting the scoring scale based on how people are doing. It's a nasty thing about, well, it's not nasty. It's just how the LSAT is, which is that they don't adjust the scores based on how you do. So sometime it's like the professor in college who's like, if you all do well, you'll all get an A. That's how LSAC is. They don't feel the need to curve it. So yeah, the 50th percentile is now a 153. That's a 2-point increase from back what it was. And that being said, the 99th percentile is all the way up to a 174. I think it was like a one set. Okay, that's not that crazy because I think it was a 173 back in the day, maybe a 172. Either way, scores have shifted up a little bit. And because of that, they should shift back down when it goes to LR, LRRC. That being said, they maybe LSAC adjust the scores, but LSAC historically has not. So I would be surprised if they made the scoring scale easier to compensate for the lack of logic games. So yeah, kind of tricky, but it should make these upcoming years have lower medians for law schools. Typically, law schools are aiming to increase their medians. And hence, raise the prestige of their school. Basically, all schools are trying to increase their medians. Whether or not they can depends on the applicant pool, but they're always trying to. That being said, if they're not able to, if there's not applicants with high scores, they can't increase them because, there's just no one to grab. So because there will be less high scores without logic games, I would expect medians to come down, which means that if you have taken the LSAT with logic games and hence nailed a great score, I think there's a good chance that you're going to be above your competition. Because if you have a 176 or 170, like a 175 plus basically, and you're applying this upcoming cycle, you're going to be compared to people that have largely taken it in its new format, and this new format should lead to lower scores. It's not to say you can't get a 175 plus with the new format. It's just, it'll be harder because you're not going to get all 23 points on logic games just as a gimme. And it is a gimme for people that are good at the LSAT. Logic games, you walk in, it's easy mode. And reading comp and LR, while they can still be pretty easy, it's easier to drop a question because you just misread a prefix or misunderstood something. You can still get close to perfection, but it's not quite as reliable as LG, and you don't get to really turn your brain off. Like you have to be you're very engaged in reading comp and LR. In games, I don't even have to be mentally on. You could wake me up at 4 in the morning, throw me down in front of a games thing and like be banging symbols next to my head. I'll still get through games. You do that to me in LR, won't be as pretty. I'd still do well because I've, really practiced it, but it's not like I'm just going to effortlessly cruise to perfection like I would with games. So yeah, overall, games going away, kind of weird. It's that awkward time of year where I really don't think that people should be studying for it unless you're already close to where you are. So yeah, my verdict is pretty simple, which is basically if you've been studying for a while and you're close, take it with games. If you are really even on the fence, I would just say ditch them because any energy you put into them will be wasted if you don't end up taking it with games. Okay, so that's that. Next up, we're going to talk about the best way to apply, well, not the best way to apply law school, but the best thing you can do in your applications as far as your supplemental stuff. By that, I mean your essays, your addendums, blah, 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 statements, personal, diversity, etc., YX. And the best thing you can do is stand out. These admissions officers, when they're reading your application, are reading you in the context of reading 50 files in one day. And because of that, if you kind of blend in, that's going to make you, blend in. And as someone who reads a lot of these essays and applications to help people, you find that many of them kind of come down to the same themes, and you want to avoid those. The way you do it is it's more of an art than a science, but you want to stand out in some positive way. So the common themes that people go down that are very kind of boring, not to be harsh, but boring, is one, talking about, your very standard paralegal job. I think if you can talk about crushing it, that's awesome. And I actually like talking about your work as a general rule, but execution really matters. You want to make sure you're standing out in some way. So you want to make sure that you are not, just talking about very basic stuff because their eyes are going to glaze over. And I guess if you're applying to an average school that likes your numbers, it's not a big deal if they're bored by you. But if you're applying to the top schools, they really are looking at your essays. That being said, they're not looking at your essays to overcome your numbers deficiencies. You're going to need both the numbers and the essays at these schools. So if you're a 155 and you're expecting to get into Harvard because you have an awesome essay, I am here to bring you to reality, which is, yes, they care about your essays, but they also care about your numbers. You're going to need both. So yeah, you want to stand out. Other things that really blend in and get boring. I mean, really anything about undergrad. It's like if you're talking about your thesis, it's just like, okay, who cares? Not because who cares, but it's a thesis, it's not that big a deal. Or if you're talking about being the social chair of your fraternity or sorority, I mean, you could do it well, but generally people kind of fall flat on their face as a overall rule. And I guess that's kind of all things, because there are many ways to stand out well. There are also many ways to stand out poorly. If you haven't reviewed your documents, if you have many typos, if you're complaining about anything, I'm not much for universals in admissions, but the one universal I would say is don't complain. Complaining will kill you because then they're going to go, oh, is this person going to come to our school and complain? And it's also just a mindset that won't serve you. I get that the world isn't fair. I'm not going to tell you it is, but focusing on that is a very self-fulfilling prophecy. You will end up a loser if you think the world is out to get you, pretty universally. And then you'll go, oh, it's not my fault. It's because the world got me. When in reality, it was your perspective. So yeah, is the world fair? No, but I should think you are the most optimistic, happy person having read your file. If I get a feeling other than that, that's a bad thing. So you want to be pretty positive. Complaining really in any sense, even if it's valid, even if it's true, I don't care. Cut it, keep it out. But yeah, basically you want to differentiate. I'm trying to think about what else is good. I mean, just think about what's different to you. If you're unsure of where to start with your essays, think about what the most impactful experiences in your life are. Whether it was I don't know, if you played the saxophone, the first person that gave you a saxophone, you really have to tie it together. And I'm realizing that talking through this is not the most actionable advice. But I guess the question you can ask yourself whenever you're working on an essay is, does this piece of paper or this piece of writing differentiate me from the other applicants? If it doesn't, it's probably not a great essay. Doesn't mean it's a bad essay, but it won't help you overperform your numbers. And yeah, people really struggle with that. So if you're having trouble with that, reach out, shoot me an email, and we can work to get you to being a really differentiated essay. And I also have some samples I'm working on getting out from people. Many of them are current applicants, but some of them are overperforming their weight. And that does bring me to another thing, which is throughout this past year, I've been telling people that this was going to be a slow cycle and hence applying late wouldn't hurt. I was wrong. Applying late really hurt this cycle. The people I worked with that applied in like December and onwards versus the people that applied earlier, the results are night and day. Like even with pretty comparable numbers, the types of admissions things that the people that applied early are getting versus those that applied later is astronomical. So when people tell you applying early isn't that big a deal, I will tell you as someone who works with many people who have similar numbers and similar essays, because all of them are getting the green like stamp of approval from me. The difference is tangible, it's real. Whether, and I don't know, maybe at some schools it's not a big thing, but as overall like trends, yeah, it absolutely is a huge difference applying with a 170, 3.9 in like November versus applying in January. It's wild. So yeah, fun stuff. Basically, if you take one thing away, just don't become boring in your essays. Keep yourself different. How you do that is up to you, but I would differentiate. Okay, real quick, we are gonna crank through a personal statement. So let's break it down. So let me open this up. And we'll think about, does this differentiate this person or does this person kind of end up, boring? So they open and say, my strength is my ability to accomplish the goals I set for myself. So first off, not like what law school applicant wouldn't say that they accomplished their goals, whether or not it's true, everyone's going to say that. So I would say, probably not the best opener, but we'll see what they do. They continue. My drive and willpower enable me to defeat all obstacles I face. That's very that's very telling, not showing. Show the obstacles, show yourself conquering them. Don't just say you do so. I have to believe you and I don't want to have to believe you. Like force me to believe you. It's much more powerful that way. They continue. This is the best way that I know how to describe myself at my present age. I would just cut that entirely. Don't say how you describe yourself. That's not needed. Just keep it, tangible, like more info, not like how you view yourself. I don't want to know that. However, I have not always held this view of myself. Okay, let's see where they go. It wasn't until recently that I was subconsciously reminded of an event that occurred to me as a young 5-year-old girl in Ghana. I'm like, if we're going to do that, I would lead with it. But generally, I don't love stories about being a little kid. Not to say universally you can't make it work, but I want to picture you as an adult, not as a little kid. One day, while walking with my sister and our headmaster to visit a records office to obtain school documents that my older sister and I needed to travel to the US to join our parents. So that's a very long sentence. I break that down. You don't need so many details. The headmaster said to me in Tweet, quote, "You are a lazy girl. You will struggle in life. You won't find a good husband to marry." So yeah, I guess we're talking about how they didn't have great self-worth because they got negative feedback from adults in their life, which like, I don't know. I guess maybe if we like spin it into how you grew, but this is feeling quite generic at this point, which is unfortunate because you have a lot here. Like presumably you were a 5-year-old in Ghana. That means you immigrated at some point, which, could be a statement depending on what it is, but okay, sure. So they didn't used to have self-worth. Now they do. At 5 years old, I didn't understand the weight of his words. I didn't understand his reasons or motivations to utter such words to a young child. Yeah, if you didn't understand it, why did it stick with you? It's kind of odd. Like you're inviting the reader to be skeptical. You're saying you didn't understand the like gravity of the rude thing that this guy was saying, but like, why did it stick with you then if you didn't understand it? It just, and I mean, there may be a totally valid answer, but if I'm having that reaction, so could an admissions officer, and it almost feels like manufactured. So I might just cut that entirely. But yeah, also terrible dude, shouldn't be saying that to children. It's like pretty universal. Like one of the worst things you can do as an adult hanging out with kids is like, well, it's not the worst thing you can do. There are much worse things. But you shouldn't be discouraging. You shouldn't tell 5-year-olds they're stupid. 5-year-olds literally have the world to be like, who knows what this girl will be, and you're telling her she's dumb. Probably not great. But okay, sure. Look, so far, is this person different? I mean, kind of. It's not the worst because they're from Ghana. It's, it kind of has captured my attention. I wouldn't say I'm like crazily attached and I'm not super impressed by what they've said thus far, but it's not terrible either. So I think there's good stuff here. I would just reformulate how I'm going to present it. All right, so let's continue. Second paragraph. His words were long forgotten and recently came to mind as I pondered over my life and assessed my accomplishments and the challenges I faced in life. Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I would just cut that. The way our mind works is amazing. Cut that as well. It has the power to help you recall situations and events in your life that knowingly or unknowingly played a role in how you operate. cut that too. I don't care how the mind works. I care about you and, who you are. And this is like talking about the mind, which, yeah, it's fascinating. Don't get me wrong, but it's not relevant to whether or not you should be a lawyer. So bye-bye. All right, continuing. My formative years were characterized by low self-confidence and self-doubt. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see this more of a narrative if we're going this route, not telling. Like, we really want to show, not tell. My personality, my strengths, and my willpower were bottled up. Once again, telling, not showing. This is very evident as I compare the current state of affairs in my life to my past. Yeah, I mean, don't say that. Just show it. The reader will get there on their own. You don't have to like force it down their throat. They'll accept it if you show them. But show how now you're this confident, like young woman who's applying to law school and is going to be a lawyer, all that stuff. It's going to go much better than just saying I'm like crushing it. Because like, I don't know, maybe, but why should I believe you? I have no reason to. That little girl from Ghana has grown to be a force to be reckoned with. I've exceeded my expectations of what I am capable of achieving. And it's like, yeah, all this is fine as far as like brainstorming, but now we have to go to like actually showing what you're doing and how you've grown. So I don't hate it in terms of an idea. I don't like it as a final person statement. I want to really be seeing what you're doing, and we don't see what you're doing. I don't know what you're up to. I just know you're like a young woman applying to law school and you grew up in Ghana, which, that's fine. But I think they get into details. So let's see what else they go. All right. Moreover, and this is the third paragraph, what I've learned about myself over the years is that my empathetic nature has led me to be a confidant, and that's spelled wrong. Sorry. No, that is right. I assume they mean confident, but they really do mean confidant. A confidant to family and friends due to my ability to understand and give people space to own their emotions and feelings. Once again, you have a habit of really long sentences. I would cut that down. I don't know exactly how many that is. That's not the longest sentence we've had, but I think that one's like 30 words. So let's just do a word count on that real quick. Word count. That is 42 words. Holy crap, 25 hard cap. And even that, I don't like 25 word sentences, but hard cap. So you got to cut that down. Keep it simple. But let's continue. In my family, I'm the go-to person for problem solving. Once again, show me, don't tell me. I have cultivated trusting relationships with those I encounter. My compassionate nature led me to the field of social work. As a social worker, I have been able to, and then something got cut. I think they were going to say something, but as I have been able to, then leads into the next sentence, which is the realization of these soft skills led me to the field of social work. So yeah, slight formatting issue, but fix that. In the field, I was able to expound. I don't think that's right. I could be wrong. I don't think the word expound is a word, but let's look it up. Yeah, expound means to give a detailed explanation of something. I think you mean expand. That is a word, but that's not what that word means. So don't use it. Also, if like I don't know the word, that means you're being too wordy. Because like I have a pretty large vocabulary. Not to like toot my own horn, but like I know a lot of words. If I don't know it, that's a bad sign. You don't want your reader looking up words as they're reading your statement. It means you're writing too fancy. I mean, in fact, if the average listener doesn't recognize it, that's a problem. If the average 10th grader doesn't know the word, drop it. Like it needs to be fairly straightforward. Okay, so either way, we're saying you expand on your soft skills as well as gain invaluable hard skills that have assisted me with advocacy work. Once again, we're telling, not showing. We need to actually show, and we're not doing that. I've had the opportunity to collaborate with vulnerable populations by identifying issues and problem solving to bring about lasting change. Okay, so we're just going to keep going through this. I'm going to skim it because we're really going to continue going down this path of showing. No, it was telling rather than showing. And we need to fix that. You need to show this. You need to make it more compelling. Like, I mean, none of this is bad information. There's nothing here that's like raising red flags, but there's nothing here that's like, wow, this person's killing it. And I want to have that impression. So the next paragraph is about being a teen mom, which is quite the different thing. Okay. I actually don't hate that because you gave birth during spring break and still stayed in school. I mean, that could be a statement if you do it well. I actually think that could be a really good statement. I mean, execution obviously matters, but that's a pretty unique story that not very many people have. Additionally, you can back it up with facts because you stayed in school. Okay, you have a company. Which does professional development for teens and young parents. Yeah, I mean, I would talk about maybe building that company, building the course, maybe a client who you really helped. That could be good. And then you also then talk about public speaking, and that's kind of tying together you were shy, and now you're doing these public presentations. You said you did PBS Rocky Mountain in Colorado. You wrote books. Yeah, I mean, you have a ton of good stuff here. So like, I think you led with pretty boring things. Or not boring, but it was so much telling rather than showing. So you have really good stuff. You can talk about your company. You can talk about the books you wrote, the presentations you've given, giving birth to your kid, and then immediately returning back to school. All of that could be good. I would pick like one, maybe two stories and start over. It's not bad though. Like I think overall this is an above average statement. I just think it could be an elite statement if you edit it. But I think this might be the best one I've read cold on air without having looked at it. So congrats to the person that sent this over. I think it was pretty good. It does differentiate you. I just think we could have gotten there a little quicker. It really was loaded towards the backwards. Sorry, the back end, because it was very focused initially on like kind of saying, oh, I am so perseverant or whatever. And we have all these good facts, but we just didn't get to them until very deep in our statement, which generally we want to, at least hook them. So maybe even if we then bury the lead, we've hooked them in. And this didn't hook them. It was kind of boring to start, and it got better as we went on. So yeah. All right, cool. And I had something else to go through. Oh, I had an email from someone. And I think this is just good to talk through. It's a long email, so we're just going to give this person feedback on their situation. Just because, I think it's very telling. And yeah, although I won't name them. So this is someone who had done an hour of tutoring with me as well as a month of class. For what it's worth, I don't think this person was doing the LSAT particularly seriously. I mean, in our tutoring session, it was like 3 weeks in the class and they did not understand how I did logical reasoning. And it was like one of those things where it's like, have you even been coming to class? Because if you had, you would understand, like, I mean, it's something we do like 10 times every day in class and you don't even know what so to me, it just indicates a lack of seriousness. And honestly, given how this person's acting thus far, I mean, I don't mean to be harsh, but I don't think they get to be a lawyer. So they responded and said, because we've been emailing, and they said, I apologize for the late response, which is totally fine. I mean, I don't care if you respond late. Life has gone very crazy lately. For an update, I took the February LSAT and scored a 142, which right off the bat, a 142 is not going to get it done in admissions anywhere. Even if you get in and this person doesn't have the highest GPA, to my understanding, it's not going to get you offers worth taking. And yeah, they then say how they prepared for the LSAT. They don't give me their schedule. They just give me a resource they use, which like, I don't know. I think it's less about what resource you use and how much effort you put in. There are bad LSAT resources, don't get me wrong, but like if you diligently study day by day, you should get better, kind of regardless of what you're doing, just by getting more familiar with the questions and what's going wrong as you do them. And they say, I was very upset because I know that is not a good score, but everyone kept telling me to look at the bright side since the last time I took the LSAT was in February of 2023, and I received a 130. With my 142 score, I applied to the following schools at the beginning of March. Okay, so you're applying really late with a really bad score, and you have a bad GPA. You're going to get rejected by everywhere. Even if you get it, you're going to get a terrible offer to a terrible school, which, as we've talked about on this podcast, debt sucks. And especially out of these schools where you're not going to likely make that much post-graduation. So I would really avoid that. I think applying with a 142 shows that you really aren't that aware of what the process is. You might be a little bit rosy-eyed about what, being a lawyer actually looks like in terms of salaries and whatnot. Because it was largely schools. I mean, I don't want to name them because I don't want to dox this person, but I believe these schools are all in like I don't think any of them are in the top 100. Okay, maybe that one is, but so you've already been rejected by a school where I will look up what the school's median LSAT is and GPA just to show that this is not exactly a Harvard. So let me look up their 509 report real quick without naming it. I mean, you might be able to reverse engineer what school it is based on what I tell you. And I guess that won't really dox them. So it's the University of Louisville. I don't know. It's in Kentucky. But the point is, their LSAT range is a 158 75th percentile to a 152. At a 142, this person is going to be 10 points below their 25th, which means they're done so. And then additionally, I want to say this person is like a 3.3, and their GPA range is a 3.83 to a 3.31, which means this person is below both 25th percentiles, and hence ain't nobody going to want you at that school. And I think that's the lowest ranked school you apply to. I could be wrong because I'm not familiar with these other schools terribly well, but it's just not going to get it done. A 140, like you're going to have to get to at least the 150s. And yeah, so then they say I was absolutely devastated when I got into U of L. I don't know why you were devastated. I could have told you that before you applied. There was zero chance of you ever getting in. They didn't even read your application, I can tell you. When you show up with those numbers, there's no reason. The only reason they would even consider taking you, and even if they're going to take someone below median, they're not going to take someone 10 points below their 25th. They're going to take someone at like a 150 who, like, yeah, they're below, but they're not below by that much. And the only reason they do that is to then charge them full price and, skin them for a school that doesn't even deserve really $1 of tuition. Like, I would really try not to pay. So yeah, you were going to get denied from day one. Doesn't matter what everything else says. They continue. and say that I knew that even though I was applying late, I believed I would still have a chance. Yeah, you had no chance. I don't mean to be harsh, but you literally stood zero chance applying to the school. My employer is an attorney that graduated from this law school and still works with him today and went to speak to admissions on my behalf, but it was not enough to get me in. Yeah, because you're overcoming such a deficit. It's not like you're a little bit below, you are way below what they're looking for. When a law school rejects you, that means they don't even want your money. Not only do they not want you to come to their school, they don't even want you to pay tuition because these schools need revenue. So the fact that they won't even take your money is a really bad sign. That means you are so far out of what they're looking for. They're worried that you are going to hurt their rankings so badly by admitting you. And this is not Harvard. This is not a school that, I mean, you're going to need a higher LSAT by a lot. And I don't mean to be harsh, but like having worked with you, I have not been impressed by the effort I saw or the making the LSAT serious. If you are wanting to go to law school, the LSAT is literally the most important thing in your future and getting your chances. So if you're not giving it that level of attention, I don't know. It's like, do you actually want to be a lawyer? Because this isn't, I mean, it's like an hour a day for like 3 to 4 months. Maybe longer, maybe like 6 months for 2 hours at most. Either way, what's 6 months times 2 hours? 6 times 2. Okay, we'll say 180. That's like less than 400 hours for like an intense study. That's like, yeah, it sucks. Don't get me wrong, but like that's not a crazy amount of work. That's like 20% of a full-time job for a year. And it's for 1 year and then you're done with it forever. And it will massively change the kind of schools you're going to and at what price. So I don't know. I think if someone's unwilling to take the LSAT seriously, it's not, and this isn't about the LSAT, it's about the fact that this is a necessary prerequisite to go to law school. If you're not willing to take it seriously, I don't think you're taking being a lawyer seriously. And hence, I don't know that like, this is the path for you, which is fine. You don't have to be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer, but you also have to acknowledge what the barrier to entry is. And if you're not willing to do that, you don't get to be part of the club. So, it is what it is. And it's a necessary but not sufficient condition. I did it. I'm part of the club. I could have gone to like good law schools, but I was just like, no, not for me, which is also cool. They continue. I had recommendation letters from an old professor and attorneys that work with me. Yeah, letters of rec don't get you in. They only keep you out. If you have really bad letters of rec, it'll hurt you, but they almost never help you. So it does not matter who wrote them. You say that they're all alums of the school. It literally does not matter. Unless they have like huge donations that they're giving, like hundreds or millions of dollars a year, they're just not going to care. And honestly, there's not that many lawyers that are doing that well out of this university. Like, we're not going to break down their employment stats, but there's not a lot of like multi-millionaires that are coming out of this law school. Not to be harsh, but that's just reality of the employment situation. So yeah, theoretically, it could help you if they had strings to pull, but these people don't have strings to pull. And even if they go to admissions and say, hey, why did so-and-so not get in? They'll just say, dude, they had a 142 and a 3.3. What are we supposed to do? This person is not prepared for law school. And also they're going to kill our ranking. So yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just really trying to expand on this. All right, continuing. Currently where I am at, I'm still waiting on Kentucky and Indiana, both of which will reject you. Spoiler, you're not getting in. I've decided if I get into Indiana, you will not go. Well, you don't have to worry about that. You're not going to get in. And then you're waiting on Kentucky. I mean, is Kentucky a terrible law school? I don't think they are. I don't think you stand a chance. Let's pull it up. Yeah, no chance. They have higher numbers than Louisville. So you're with the 142. The law schools aren't honest about this, but they have cutoffs. They have cutoffs where if you're below a certain point, they're not even reading your application. And with a 142, 3.3, you're cut off. No one's getting to your letters of rec that are supposedly so stellar, or everything else. It doesn't matter. It's like when you're so far below on the numbers, the rest of it just does not matter, regardless of how good it is. And that being said, I mean, maybe your stuff is really good. I am skeptical. People's supplemental stuff is often not as good as they think it is. But even if it were, you're just not overcoming the point that you're at. So you continue. If you get into Kentucky, you're going to go. Well, once again, you're not going to get in. If you do not, you'll take a gap year and apply for fall 2025. I know I need to retake the LSAT. I'm struggling with how to approach studying for it again. I mean, do it one question at a time. Pick a way to study, whether it be a class, a program, doing prep tests over and over. You just got to get going. It's more about putting one foot in front of the other and chugging along. It's less about exactly how you do it. So start going. How you do it is less important than doing it. You said you've also been looking into a paralegal program. I mean, don't do that for admissions chances. Do it if you want to be a paralegal and you don't want to be a lawyer, which I mean might be the path for you, but I mean, as of now, and I'm not gonna say you can't be a lawyer. I'm just gonna say, given what I've seen thus far, you can't be a lawyer. You can totally change that, and in the future, make yourself a better applicant. But with a 142 and a 3.3, like you're just not there for one of two reasons, which is either you didn't do the work or you don't have the horsepower. I really don't think that the horsepower thing is, I don't think anyone caps out at 142 unless you're like legitimately intellectually disabled, which I don't think this person is. And I don't mean like you have ADHD or dyslexia. I mean like actual intellectual disability. So you're capable of more, which means I don't think you did enough prep and you didn't take this seriously enough. Like, and part of this is because I worked with you, so I do kind of know some details in terms of like you. I mean, you didn't come to, but I guess not coming to class isn't the biggest deal because theoretically you could always watch the recordings. I do on-demand stuff for my classes, but it's like one of those things where when we met for tutoring, you didn't even know what you wanted to go through. We talked through questions and you had no idea how I even did questions, which is concerning because you'd been in class supposedly for weeks at that point. And I don't have some complicated strategy. Like it's understand the question, find out what's wrong with an LR, attack it, then read the question, predict an answer. It's like, I mean, I basically gave you guys my whole spiel in 5 seconds there. It's not rocket science. So I was concerned when you didn't understand that. Yeah, I mean, I'm really not trying to make this harsh. Maybe I'm being harsher than I should be, but also I think this might be the like reality you need to hear. Like you are one of the less impressive people I've worked with this year. Out of the hundreds of people I've worked with, I would put you in kind of the bottom percentiles in terms of like what I've seen you do to forward yourself. You can change that, but if you don't change how you're approaching the law school application process, nothing's going to change in terms of results. You're going to have to start doing something differently. Which brings me to one of my least favorite sayings of all time, which is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over without getting the same result, which is not the definition of insanity. Fun fact, that is not at all what being insane means. But it is a famous quote. I want to say it's Yogi Berra, but I hate it because it's not the definition of the word. It's just like a colloquial thing that we say. Maybe it's an American saying, or maybe it's an English speaking saying more broadly, but you know, it's very applicable to your situation, whether or not I don't like the saying or not, which is what you're doing is not working. You need to change what you're doing. Honestly, I think it's a seriousness thing. I don't think you're giving the LSAT an hour to 2 a day for a substantial period of time. You might do it for like a day or two, but you need to do it for like 6 months straight and then see where you're at. If you do that, I don't see how you get to above like how you won't get to like above 158. And then you're getting into these schools. Like ipso facto, it's donezo. So yeah, you need to stop worrying about everything else other than the LSAT and just do the LSAT seriously for a few months. It really is that simple. And yeah, okay, well, so I think that was good to touch on, but yeah, so if you want to hear about anything LSAT or admissions related, like on the agenda, just shoot an email into ben@lsasimplified.com. I'm also curious if the solo episodes are better or if you guys like when I talk to someone. So if you have impact or not input on that, shoot me an email because I'm just curious. I also don't advertise the podcast, so tell a friend, tell your pre-law, and yeah, I will see you all next time.